Rahubat Collective, welcome in. We're going to be talking about family trauma and labels. We all know them. Families all got them. You got the mother, the father, the sister, the brother, the child. You got your cousins, your aunt, your uncle, everything in between, right? We tend to think, due to how we're raised, some people are raised differently, but the majority of people that I've at least ran into and see in today's age, um, see family and their titles as a need for being held in a higher position than they are. Now, of course, like they are those things, like they are your mother, they are your father. These things, these are labels that they are put on because at the end of the day, they're people just like you. But your mother and your father were the ones that brought you into life. Your sisters and your brothers are the ones that were born alongside of you, or if you had twins with you, um, to help you along this journey by either being older than you and giving you the experience of aging, or younger than you by giving you a fresh perspective on how things are. So the big key here is to, it's not about necessarily deleting the labels, but remembering that just because these people have those labels doesn't always mean that you will be lesser than them in a form. We tend to, when we have labels, put people on a pedestal rather than holding them accountable for their actions, which is a big issue because a big form of respect is by making sure one is held accordingly. So, and that doesn't necessarily mean using it as blackmail or as emotional leverage, but in the sense of like, if one makes a mistake, allow if give them the room and the space to admit it without holding it so grudgingly against them. A lot of people will be like, "Oh, you made a mistake, and you were supposed to man, and you're my father, or you're my mother, and you were supposed to do." Well, they were, but give them slack, because just as you are here experiencing your stressors, they've been here longer experiencing their stressors, and unfortunately, not everyone is healed. So you might have had a parent that was unhealed, so they weren't able to be there for the full role um, that society has placed on that individual, of whether it be like a mother and they weren't able to be there for their quote unquote full motherly duties that society makes them think they have, versus the father, versus like the sister or brother, like, you're supposed to be here for me emotionally because you're my sister or brother, and they're like, nah, they just couldn't, right? We tend to forget things of that nature, and it's because, whether they're older or younger, it's because we believe that they don't understand what we're going through, when in actuality they do. They just have a different perspective on it, and based off of how they were raised, it reflects onto them. So a lot of times when you have these labels, you go, oh well, it's my dad's just an asshole. I hear that a lot, like my mom or dad was just an asshole, right? Well, you have to remember the age difference, the time difference, right? The geographical difference, the race difference, um, and as well as their parents, who were their parents and how were they raised. These aren't just people popping out of nowhere just to be assholes to you. They have a whole generational trauma lineage that they are either trying to heal or have stooped into, right? And that's not to say that you are the blame, or that anger and frustration should be projected at the individual. You should really take the time to look at it as it is. Like, yeah, they're going through things, I'm going through things. Why am I trying to push my anger on someone for me going through things on my parental figure or my family members, due to a lack of understanding or a lack of even compassion, you know? A lot of time, um you'll hear within families like, oh, you just don't know, like, I'm this old and you don't know how hard it is, and yada yada this, yada yada that. You get all these like excuses from from individuals because they believe that because they aren't going through someone's not going through their exact situation, that they would never understand or be able to communicate with them. Now, to some degree, that's true. Well, because they'll never get the full spectrum of how you see things, even if you do describe it, because they're not looking through your eyes. They don't have your brain, right? So no matter how much you describe it to them or try to explain it, they might not see it that way because they either aren't on your level mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, even. And you have to realize that and really digest that and let that sit in so that you don't hold any harboring resistance um, towards the family member that's not understanding. A lot of times when you grow up with um, family around you, like brothers and sisters and stuff, you expect them, even aunts and uncles, depending on who you are, nephews and nieces as well. You expect them to have more time for you because you're the younger one, and that's not always met, which can lead to a lot of complications. It can lead to a lot of um, buried issues, especially if you grew up with multiple family members and then like you have like a few brothers, a few sisters, and like you're the middle child or the youngest or the oldest or whatever, and you're no longer getting that certain treatment. It's a stem. It stems from the parent not knowing how to handle one, but knowing how to handle the other. You know, maybe you're treated or sheltered more, and you're like the third child, depending on how your family is, right? It all depends on your family, the DNA, the lineage of it. So, really studying your family and how they act is going to help you see and help you remove the labels because you'll stop identifying them with, like, oh, they're a mother and a mother does this and a father does this and a sister and her brother do these things and an aunt and an uncle do these. Like, you'll stop seeing it as that and start seeing them as actual people, and that allows you to actually create bonds with them instead of relying on them and creating a codependency on them. A lot of people always are held under or over with power when it comes to labels because it's like if you know what I mean, like you're never asked opinions in family in the sense of, let's say that you're let's say you're the daughter of the family, right? And then your mother walks up and they're like, she's talking about something, but you've experienced something like that. A lot of times, because I've seen it too, the mother will express something to the daughter, and the daughter will say something. And this is goes same thing with father and son too. Um, and the mother be like expressing something that she's going through, and the daughter's gone through something similar and offers advice, and the mother goes, "You won't know what I'm talking about. You're too young." It's being held under and overpowered, where the mother thinks that her title, her age, stands over the experience of another child, not understanding that if they're experiencing it, their child will experience it to some degree, greater or lesser as well. And it's important to, especially if you are in the position of being a father or a mother or a father, to be understanding when it comes to being expressive and allowing your offspring to talk to you in that sort of manner, to express that they know what's going on as well, um, so you're not feeling as isolated and left out. Because when you were growing up, maybe your parents were going through something that you didn't fully understand until you got older, and it's a part of you that's trying to protect them from some form of trauma that is shown to them a lot earlier on in life, as for them than it was for you. Especially the way society is growing right now, a lot of people are going through the traumas that their parents went through, but they wouldn't even know how that would be possible because your parents had a whole different life than the children did. But the children are now experiencing the same events and same traumas as their parents did. And that can cause a lot of fear and make you want to overprotect, or even as a child, make you feel overprotected. And that's when you express and actually talk, um, rather than bottling things up. Always remembering that your child has freedom. Always remembering that your parents have freedom as well. Everyone's living their own life. You don't get to control And a lot of people, when they give birth to parents, are like, I'm your parent, I get to do everything that I say. Like, that's not exactly true. You, like, you know, it wasn't just one person bringing that life in, it was a cooperation that involved as well the spirit of life to come through. And with that spirit of life is created a new form of life, a new way of living within that entity that was born, right? You can't compare one life to another. You have to look at it and see where it falls adjacent. And a lot of parents know this, and a lot of parents have that like high wisdom. And sometimes it's just a child that's not willing to listen, and sometimes the parents not willing to listen. But there's always adjacents that go by. There's always a time where one's going to have the answer that the other one asks, because they're in that life, they're in that form for a reason. They know some form of answer that will help you elevate or even move past obstacles. But due to, oh, I can't talk to my mother like that because she's my mother, what would she think about that? All these things to be evaluated, because it's not about the title of being a mother, it's about the person who is your mother. Anyone can be motherly, anyone can be fatherly. These are just roles that are given to you by today's society and how it's constructed. Anyone can have those qualities. In fact, if you ask any man, like, what does it mean to be a father? Most of them won't even tell you what it actually is to be a father. Some women won't even tell you what it's actually mean to be a woman. They'll just describe to you chores, and not even chores, I would say activities. They'll describe to you activities and actions that they take under that role, rather than describing what it means to be within that role, within that stature. And that's something that a lot of people don't remember when it comes down to parenting, is that parenting isn't just the adults talking down or at to the child. A lot of parenting comes from when the child talks to the parent and allows them to say, hey, I don't like the way that you're doing this, why don't we switch it up this way? Maybe you didn't have a chance to do that as a child, so now as a parent you love to communicate, you know, and you're building that bond, which is good. And if you're not, or you're thinking about becoming a parent, work with that. A lot of people have a lot of family traumas because their family gains this superiority, like, oh, I'm older than you, so I have to be doing these things before you. And again, that comes with that label of feeling more important. It comes with that thinking that labels equal experience, right? So a lot of people with this family trauma and labels, they'll see the youth or the younger doing things a little bit better or different than the older, right? And the older will get a form of jealousy, depending. It doesn't even have to be like an older, like in a mother or father. This could be sister, brother, or however. This could even be the younger looking at the older and getting jealous of that, or they want to say, no, you have to do it like this in order to feel some sort of control, and or stir up an emotion so that they don't feel almost left out of an event or a situation. A lot of times within the labels, um saying like little brother and things like that, even though it doesn't affect everyone, some people do get affected by it, and it makes them feel lesser, so they need to do something to gain that additive strength, that adult stature almost, where they can control an emotion. And that comes with this experience thing. It ties in with the experience, because when you're in that family trauma of like mother arguing with daughter, or you know, however this is working out, right? The older or the younger will always think that they have more experience in something, and they'll go to arguing rather than talking. Like the mother will be like, oh, you don't even have a child, how can you know how to mother, let me teach you how. Or the child will be like, I'm the child, let me tell you how to do everything, when it's in actuality a balance of both, where you're both needing to express these ideas and come to a working ground, you know. Remembering that everyone's a person at the end of the day is really what's going to get people through a lot of these label issues within the family trauma, because a lot of people like to hold people accountable, and you have to find something to hold them accountable to. And it's like, well, you have this label, you're supposed to be this in my life, and if you're not doing this to the stature that makes me feel comfortable or good, then I'm gonna call you a bad mother, a bad father, a bad sister, a bad brother, a bad grandparent, a bad uncle, nephew, niece, whatever. You're gonna call them a bad one because they're not agreeing to your own stance. And a lot of people um, forget that when you say these things, doesn't matter what the label is, it's another person that you're talking to. No matter how much humility or humanity they may show to you, it's still another person that you're projecting that energy out to. And you end up holding this grudge to where you'll either repeat the same family traumas that your family did onto other people or to your own family, or you end up bottling it up um, and hurting yourself in the midst by making yourself feel like you're unworthy of certain things due to how you were raised, etc., etc. And etc., etc., meaning like you were raised in like a family that was labeled poor or whatever, and then you're afraid to go out and do things because you've been labeled as poor, so that changes your whole outlook on life. Now you've grown in survival mode, and it's up to you to leave that survival mode, but you can't because you're so stuck within that trauma of that label, making you feel like you're going to be in lack. This is why they have these labels instated, so that you feel lesser than, you feel low, um, so you feel so you're vibrating at a lower vibration as well. Um, But remember that even no matter like even if you're raised like a middle class or whatever, it doesn't matter. That label does not matter. That is how the government's going to look at you, not how people are going to look at you, unless people are looking through the government's lens, which most people do in society, unfortunately. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. What does that say about your family? People like to, compare labels and be like, oh, if they're a low income family, that means they're bad. Or if they're a high income family, that means they're good. When those could be the exact opposites, right? It's all about the interactions of that family rather than the labels. And when it comes to the titles of the family, even if it's um even if it's for like doing chores, like let's say you have like the family that does chores, right? When it's only the children doing the chores or however like that, be sure to like involve yourself so that you're just making sure that your children know that it's not just a slave thing. Because a lot of times whenever you are going through things, and even as an adult do this as well, because it's going to help you become more responsible with yourself, um but it's like when you do something, make sure that you're advocating for your family, for the ones that you're also around and raising, to that same thing. If you're working on healing yourself and you have a family that has some issues, reach a hand out and be like, hey, I could help you with these things if they're willing to. That doesn't mean to continuously go to them if they're not willing to, right? There are people at the end of the day, they have their own choices. Some families stay together, some families don't. That's okay. And that doesn't mean that you have devils in your family. That doesn't mean that you have people doing dark magic on you. It just means that there was an emotional imbalance within that family that you were also a part of because you were involved in it. And that means that you need to either separate yourself from that unit until you figure yourself out and are able to cooperate with that unit, or separate yourself until the unit itself fixes itself. Um, and sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. A lot of people hold this false respect because of it, like, oh, they're my mother, so I have to respect them, or I have to do this, I have to do that. That's that false respect that leaves room for arrogance, for anger, for um false falsities to leak in. It leaves room for reasonings to be angry, reasons to start arguments, reasons for anger and resentment to harbor within the vessel. It's important for you, um, whoever you are, within this like family trauma unit, to heal from that, to see it as what it truly is, as you not really liking something and not speaking up about it, because it's, at the end of the day, it's going to reflect back to you. People can only get away with what you allow them to get away with. So you must dig deep within yourself and realize that if you have a false respect for someone, that doesn't, it's like it doesn't help anything. It's not even a band-aid. You need to step within that integrity to talk to them and be like, hey, I don't like it when you do this, I don't like it when you do that, let's try and fix this, let's try to cooperate and work on this. Communication is definitely key throughout this whole family, throughout any of this drama series. It's all about going to be about communication, especially when it comes to the family, because this is where your communication skills are really like created. So when you feel like you have to respect someone due to a label, be sure to talk to them on like a ground basis, because the feeling of being able not to do that is what creates that. Now, some people weren't able to talk to their parents on like a one-to-one level, and that has nothing to do with you. That has to do with whoever you were communicating with, unless you were going over to the person that you're communicating with ill intent and creating an energy of hostility in the first place. That's on you. But if you walk over to the family and talk to them in a general fashion, then that's just how it is. Remembering again, like I'm gonna have to say this again, remembering that everyone's going through something as well, even if it doesn't seem like they are. It's their lives, so they're going through something. It doesn't matter if they're showing it or not. And we tend to forget a lot with this with this false respect, how it's formed even as well. um Not appreciating the family for what they are doing despite not seeing what they're going through. Maybe someone's in a really bad marriage and they're stuck in that, and they're unable to pay attention to you, but because you see them as like a sister or a brother, you want them to pay more attention to you, because you're the one needing that sort of energy at that time, right? But they weren't able to give it to you, so then you get like a false respect because it's out of like anger, like, oh, now I have to respect you even though you didn't do anything for me, despite the fact that you aren't looking at what they already have done. And adding friendships to your family, instead of it being a hierarchy, like you don't need to have like, oh, I'm the head of the house, all this shit. Who cares? Everyone should be in a collective unit within that family. It's a family unit, right? That's how it's talked about, at least. And when you overstand it and you see that everyone in the family, even though they have specific roles to play, they can all come together and operate as one, like having more family dinners, having more family cooperative events, having more game nights of that situation, building an actual relationship so that you're not feeling like a lack of love is important when it comes to building a family or being in a family. And I know some are uncomfortable doing that, but when you are healing from that trauma of not having like a family that's really into doing that sort of thing, you have to remember that they're going through things. Don't hold it against them, because you holding it against them is really you holding yourself against it by saying, why can't you do that by yourself? And then you say, oh, because it's boring or it's not as fun. Well, make it fun, make it less boring. That resides on you, but you're dependent on someone else and their energy to boost it, right? That's that dependency. That's where that false respect comes from. That's where all these back and forth can starting up. Really overstand. Um, and of course, I'm speaking from a an offspring's point of view, not necessarily a father's point of view, or being in a motherly energy for a family, because I don't have a child, simply put, right? So I can only tell you what I know and what I've experienced and what I've overstood through the healing process that I've gone through, right? Not only the healing process, but seeing what was missing within my family, and adding what would have made it better. Because these are the perspectives that people need to get. A lot of people get parenting tips from adults, and it's like the adult don't know shit when it comes down to the child, because they only know what the adults know, right? So when you start talking to your child, like, what do you want us to do? What would you rather us to do? When that opinion starts coming through, more effort will be put in, because it's like, oh, so now that I have a chance to speak and to express what I desire, let me express it and see what happens. Now that I'm able to express my desires and how and what my interests are and what I would like to do as the family, now things can start moving forward, right? Which is why you need that friendship. You need to be able to be open and honest with your family, because that then generates how open and honest you'll be moving forward within your life, how apt to love you'll be moving on in life, how constructive you'll be, even verbally constructive you'll be when moving forward in life, because it all roots, everything starts from family, and that's where all trauma starts from, because that's when you're sometimes you're put up against a wall, but you're faced with uh who you desire to be and who your parents desire to be if you were raised that way, or like even not only that, but like the trauma that you are in line to suffer from will also be and I shouldn't even say suffer, but for lack of better terms, is shown to you through other family members, you know, distant or not, it's all there. So when you end up creating a friendship with the family and really getting close to connect, that's when you're able to truly um relate. Communication skills go up, emotional regulation goes up, being able to be creative, that can pop up, being more spontaneous, letting keeping that inner child warm and alive is what helps. It allows you to show love to other people. It allows you not to be afraid, um, and show you that nothing it really is to be afraid. It gives you a support group, so you will rely on people more for support whenever in times of need, and all of these things. You're less apt to stay within a struggle for a like an undesirable purpose. You know, a lot of people are stuck within the realms of, oh, I can't get anything that I desire, even if I did have a family. You know, that'd just be a lot of stress, and the only reason there's a lot of stress is because you would want your inner child to also be involved within that family, due to maybe even being afraid of a friendship. A lot of people think that when you're in a family, you know, that friendships are bad and stuff, but it's like, it's not. When you are friends with your child, when you're friends with your mother and father, you don't have to um, fear that they aren't going to be there for you. But it's also up to you at that point in time as well to hold them accountable if they're not. Because I see a lot of people who befriend their parents, and their parents, they're like, oh, they're partiers, so I party with my parents and all that shit. That's not what I'm talking about, first of all, because that shows immaturity within the parent as well. And the fact that you're befriending them in their immature state then gives it, like, you become the enabler. So, and being aware of that as well, but really shifting your focus to see that when you are friends with your family, you can hold them accountable in that sense. Now, if the parent has unhealed childhood wounds, and you hold them accountable, they might think that you're coming at them or say something off of line, like, oh, why do you think that you can tell me that? I'm just doing this and all that thing, you know. So making sure that your family's also healing, because a lot of people think, due to not having actual friendships or just having friends that um, are more use based, like, oh, I'm going to use you for this, I need you for that, and all that stuff. All those friendships are like not real ones. There's no actual give and take for it, right? You're not receiving anything, you're just giving, right? You need to make sure that you're not doing that with your parents, or even if you are a parent, making sure that are well. Some children don't want to have a friendship with their parent, and it's because of a either like a social structure or a past trauma from yourself, because you pass down your traumas to your children through your DNA. It could be either yours or your partner's. It could be something that's, you know, known or unknown. It could be because of outside sources. It even could just be an uncomfortability. Maybe you're pushing too hard, you know, just getting to know who your child is. But starting off young is always the best, because whenever they grow up and get their own mind frame and set out like that, it becomes a bit harder to form that friendship, to form that trust, because that trust has already been manipulated and construed throughout years. So now it's more of like, why could how can I trust you? And of course, that's the child's need to heal from that, or even the parents need to heal from that. That's a whole other subject. On top of that, you might need to get therapy, family therapy, for that to really move you all through that. But at the core of it, just finding a friendship within the family, allowing cousins and nephews and nieces to hang out and to feel open to talk to the adults as well, not just the children. So it's not just like a one thing, right? Making people feel included is the whole point. Because even when you're on this earth, it doesn't matter if you have $1 million or $2, you want to be involved. You want to feel involved in something. So having that friendship, having that involvement, um, is really what's going to help a lot, because a lot of it's like, why are you friends with your mom, why are you friends with your dad? That can come off as weird. Or why are you friends with like your sister shouldn't be your friend, they're your sister. All that weird shit, I don't know who put that in those people's brains, but don't listen to that type of stuff, because you should be able to be friendly to your family members. You should be able to show them that love and lend that extending hand whenever they need. You should be there to support them. You should be there when they need, because they would be there when you need. That's how it should. That's how it would work. Is the energy would be circulated fully, and around full. Excuse me. It would be able to circulate in a full circle. I don't know why I couldn't say that, but other than that, it's super important to make sure, especially if you are in the parental seat, make sure that you are okay with being checked, and not in like a rude way, but in the sense of like, hey, you might be overreacting, let's worry about this instead, or all these other things, shifting focus, making jokes, not taking jokes as hits and insults, because it can definitely be hard to do that. I know my dad didn't like whenever I would prank him, but he would prank me all the time. But eventually he got okay with it. It was like, you shouldn't be doing that to me, it's a respect thing. But that was also because he was raised um in an older generation. So whenever I would go prank him, he would get pissed off, because like, look what you did. You didn't let me know you were gonna do this. Is the whole point of a prank, though, right? So it's all these things that you have to like, put into gear when it comes to really healing from these traumas, because it's not just you, it's them and whoever they were raised by, and then those traumas may leak onto you, so it's up to you to really stay grounded with that. But other than that, this is the family trauma um video. I love y'all so much. All the stuff is in the description that you need. A dish of shug. I love y'all so much, and I will see you all later.